Commissioner, Brendan O'Connor, the President of the GRA, said the result of the vote was a crisis. Would you agree that we're in a crisis?
No, we're not in a crisis. We're returning to an agreed roster that was worked for 7 years. We're returning on the 6th of November. We're doing so for sound policing reasons around visibility, around victim engagement. We're always open to talk to the associations. We're not in a crisis. It's wrong to describe it as a crisis, but many things the GRA describe as a crisis. It's hard to know what's not a crisis for the GRA.
Is there a way back from this or a way out?
Well, there is a way out, yes, and that is through negotiation about a new roster.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Shattered Lives, the Irish Daily Star and Irish Mirror's crime podcast. I'm your host Paul Healy, I'm crime correspondent with both papers, and as ever, I'm joined by our crime and defence editor, Michael O'Toole. That was Garda Commissioner Drew Harris there speaking to the media, and that's a particularly poignant clip that we wanted people to hear. I'll ask Mick about it because, Mick, of course, you were at that press conference, but why did we select that clip in particular to sum up this whole story, shall we say?
That was me asking him. That's why we picked it. No, I'm only joking. It struck me, obviously, yesterday, so this has been recorded on Thursday, so the Wednesday was the result of the GRA vote. And you know when there's a big story like this, there's a huge amount of information, and we only have a certain amount of words for the paper or for online, and you can't put everything in. So, you know, the top line, what I picked for the story, and the editor liked it actually, was the commissioner saying he felt the result of the vote was a kick in the teeth for him. So that's what we call, that's our top line. That's a really good line. And then he talked about, I'm not even going to consider quitting. It's illogical for anybody to suggest I'm going to quit. It's not going to happen. So, and then, yeah, you know, you have to do the news of the day, the reaction of the Justice Minister saying I fully support him and stuff. So things not everything can be reported. So I was just thinking about this today, and I tweeted it earlier. I tweeted the full quote because I thought it was a very, very strong quote by the Commissioner. Is it fair to say it was a wee bit snarky? I thought it was a wee bit snarky at the end when he got stuck into Brendan O'Connor for saying, now that was probably my fault because I asked Brendan O'Connor, do you think this is a crisis? He did, yes, it's a crisis. So I thought, right, well, that's a good line. So I'll ask the Commissioner. So that was me asking him there, do you think it's a crisis, Commissioner? And he went, no, it's not a crisis. But he did, how can I put this? It was a hard tackle that may have got him a yellow card if he was playing a game of football. We'll say it that way. You know, maybe he played the ball and the man a tad bit. Maybe that's what he wanted to do. Maybe that, who knows? But look, it's clear from the press conference, he was fucked off by the result of this vote. And, you know, I think he was returning the serve a wee bit with that comment.
Well, I kind of have perceived him in all the press conferences he's done before. He's very much kind of a straight down the line kind of player. It doesn't really divulge from the script, shall we say, depart from the script. But in all of this, he seems to have, the anger, as you say, it seems to be really coming through. I mean, it's starting to get to him. He described it as a kick in the teeth, didn't he? This vote of no confidence, which we should point out as over 98% of those who were polled that voted no confidence in the Garda Commissioners. So nearly 10,000 members of the Garda Representative Association voted no confidence this week in Garda Commissioner Drew Harris.
Yeah, so there are 13,950 sworn members, I think, at this stage. So obviously this is restricted to members of the Garda Representative Association, to the rank and file. So my atrocious maths, obviously 84% of all GRA members voted, but my atrocious maths tell me that roughly 2/3 of the entire force, so about 64.6% of all Garda members from assistant or deputy commissioner all the way down, that this vote represents 2/3 of the entire force. So yeah, I suppose you got to look at it from the commissioner's perspective. How's he not going to take this personally? Because it's aimed at the commissioner. It said in the ballot paper, do you have confidence in the commissioner of Garda Síochána? And it was a resounding no. And he's the commissioner of Garda Síochána. So he'd be, I think people can understand why he took it personally. I was sort of shocked by his reaction because we were sitting there, we were in the huddle, we were waiting for him to talk, and it was all going to be, well, he's going to say, look, it's disappointing, but we have to move on. But he did say it was hugely disappointing, and then he spoke about it being a kick in the teeth. So our collective eyebrows raised at that. So, geez, that's a great line. We didn't expect him to be so forthright about it, to put it that way.
Yeah, I think with respect, just to say, looking at it from the outside in, I think his words everything is a bit of a crisis. The GRA is a little bit bitchy, to be honest with you. It's a little bit beneath him and the office, I actually think. And I mean, I have total respect in a way for the Garda Commissioner and the job that he does, outside of who he is as a person. But I just think he was playing a little bit of the dirty game there with a phrase like that. He might regret that comment, I'd say.
I'll put it this way. I think it showed he was human. In other words,
okay,
he obviously was really, really annoyed about this. And I just think, there are ways to bat off questions. And I think for whatever reason, he didn't bat that question off. He went into, let's say, attack mode. He's perfectly entitled. He can say what he wants. But I think, it raised eyebrows, put it that way. But look, it's his decision. So.
But I think, you were right to ask that question, because I think we have to decipher where the spin is here and where the truth is. And I mean, I would just describe it, I don't know about you, but 98% of the GRA, that's 9,000 plus members of An Garda Síochána, a huge number of guards have voted no confidence in their boss.
What? No, sorry, 84% of the GRA people voted, right? But 98.7% of the 84% voted against them. So there are 116 who didn't.
Yeah, a relatively small number, but I'm saying just when something like that happens, and as Brendan O'Connor said, it's unprecedented, that is a crisis. I'm sorry. I mean, and for you to describe it as otherwise, I understand the Commissioner is just trying to get on with the job at hand, and he has to show a brave face, and obviously Minister for Justice Helen McEntee has endorsed him, and she has also said that there is no crisis. And she wouldn't meet with the GRA. She's saying she felt it was inappropriate to meet with the GRA in July because they had already cast their ballot papers.
I was feeling slightly mischievous yesterday because as we all know, the great Paul Reynolds usually asks all the questions at these press conferences, and I think we're all happy with that because Paul gets a terrible press. He is a fantastic questioner. Anybody, he just go for you. He just, he doesn't give the Commissioner an easy time. He went after the Commissioner yesterday, but I got to ask more questions. Paul let us, very kind of me, let us ask the Minister questions. So I was, this is great crack. So I was saying to the Commissioner, because Tara McManus, the Deputy General Secretary of the GRA, said basically when Simon Harris was interim Justice Minister, when Miss McEntee was off on maternity leave, he was very understanding. He met with us and he seemed to see where the GRA were coming from. But then Tara said, but this minister hasn't met us at all, won't meet us at all. So I was standing beside the minister and I said, well, Minister, what's the crack here? The GRA bigged up Simon Harris for his openness and sensitivity. Didn't say the same about you. What's going on there? And it was nice to ask questions like that. But she basically said, look, I didn't think it was appropriate because she thought that this was a personalised vote against the Commissioner and she didn't think it was appropriate to go and meet him. And I said, well, okay, grand. If I remember giving out to a senior guard once and he said, okay, I've listened to you, Mick. What's your solution? Right? So that's what I was saying to the Minister and the Commissioner yesterday. How are we going to fix it? How are you guys going to fix this? What's your solution? And the Minister just kept on saying, it's not for me to get involved in an industrial relations crisis. And my point here was, I think this is a wee bit more than an industrial relations issue. This is a crisis. And it's a crisis of policing. But she was sticking to the line that, look, it's about people sitting down and talking, have an industrial relations answer to this. And it's not for me to sit down and share these talks. I think she may have to be totally honest. I think they may have to have some sort of emergency conference.
Yeah, well, there is an emergency conference happening later this month of the GRA. We no doubt will be covering that. This isn't going to go away, is it? I mean, I know that the Garda Commissioner and the government would rather it did go away by expressing their continued confidence. The government, I mean, in the Commissioner. They think that's that. The other thing that kind of helped them a little bit, I think, in the short run, although I think in the long run there's still a lot of problems here, was the statement by AGSI, that's the Association of Garda Sergeants and Inspectors, who came out with a statement yesterday saying that the issue of confidence in the Commissioner has simply not been an issue for our association. I think that, I can't speak for the GRA, but I would say that certainly people that we know within the organisation were upset with that statement, weren't happy with it. And there are also people who I understand would be members of AGSI or have association with AGSI who don't feel that way and feel like they possibly should have been polled on whether they had confidence in the commissioner. So there's a lot of infighting issues going on.
Yes, there is. And I thought it was interesting. Look, say if 7 members of AGSI contacted me and you, it can't be representative because it just can't. But I don't know about you, but I have had conversations with some people. Now, so with that in mind, I'm going to say what they said. One of them said that, so obviously AGSI are supervisors, right? And one of them said, I could not vote against the commissioner. I just couldn't because of my position, right? Which is fair enough. You have to respect that. But they did say, if there were to be a vote, my sense is that it would go against the commissioner as well, but it would be much lower. So maybe 70-30, 65-35, something like that, but still by a clear margin. So look, AGSI have their own view on things and their own view on the roster. I mean, for background, they want the old roster coming back. They don't like, I think it's more a case of they don't like the current roster by 4 on 4. They say it's very difficult for supervisors. So that's their position. But let me ask you, Paul, we did speak about this. Were you surprised by the margin of victory or the margin of the vote?
No, because we were getting indications for some time now that there was a huge amount of unhappiness in the GRA, and someone actually did predict to me, maybe they were privy to the vote, I don't know, but someone did predict to me the day prior that it would be about 85%, if not more, that were going to vote no confidence.
Yes, so somebody was telling me that obviously it's a postal ballot, and they were saying they've had votes before, and it's been around 60% of turnout. Okay, even like in the NUJ, you and I are part of the NUJ, we would have votes, and not everybody, people, for whatever happens, people they might forget or whatever reason. So somebody was saying to me, they said it's going to be over 70%. It might be over 80%, but that was the turnout. What really astounded me was the percentage of the turnout that voted. I don't think anybody saw practically 99% of all respondents voting against the commissioner. That was a shock.
To be fair, sorry, I'm speaking about the turnout as well. In terms of the level of no confidence, it's even higher than most would have predicted.
I was thinking 80 and 80, I'll be honest.
But that to me is a crisis, and that's why I'm saying I think many would have felt like you're saying it would have been a smaller number for AGSI, but if AGSI had done a vote of no confidence backed up by a vote of no confidence from the GRA, I think we'd be having a different conversation here. That's why I think this isn't going away. I think this conference by the GRA later in the month is going to be significant. They're just going to keep beating that drum. Is it? But what kind of action can they take next? Is it going to be a blue flu, a strike of some kind?
Yeah, I think that's entirely possible, or they would call it a withdrawal of labour. And, isn't there a convoluted, they're not allowed to call on for strike, it's, dissension or whatever. But guards can make individual decisions. In other words, so you could have a station party and 80% of them could decide, they could follow the lead of the GRA and withdraw their labour for the day. Because that was nearly happened. I always forget the year, I think it was 2015, that there was narrowly, it was very close to midnight when it was averted. Could have something like that. Somebody was saying that there is a possibility that guards could refuse to do overtime.
Wow. Okay.
As one thing. Now, guards survive in overtime. I'm talking about the Garda system survives in overtime. I'll give you an example. Obviously, we're going to talk about Stephen Termini afterwards, but after that attack on Stephen Termini on July 19th, Helen McEntee, the Justice Minister, announced €10 million extra for the DMR, which is the Dublin Metropolitan Region. It's the Greater Dublin and city centre. And that was on the basis of €10 million between now and the end of the year for 240,000 extra hours, but that's overtime. So the guards, overtime is the sort of escape valve, always has been for the guards. So if guards decide, no, I'm not getting involved in overtime, you won't see those extra guards because, people talk about getting extra guardy on the beat and everything. That's guards working overtime or working their rest days. You don't magic 65 new Gardaí out of Templemore a day. It's guards who are working their days off and overtime and stuff. So if they did something like that, then that could ratchet things up really, really massively. So now look, it's the 6th of November when this new old roster comes back in. I still think there'll be a deal. I have to say, because it's moved from the policing arena into the political arena. So I think it'll be a deal. Do you?
I think you're possibly right too, but we should point out that an awful lot of guards, the roster isn't even the big issue here. I mean, we spoke about this before. Won't go on about it at length, but morale has never been lower in a way. You interviewed Laura Young about why she left the force. Many Gardaí feel the same way. They feel they're underpaid, they're overworked. It's more than just the roster system. I'll paraphrase what somebody told me there the other day. The roster issue wasn't for them, but it wasn't really their issue. Their issue was the new policing model in general. They felt was a complete waste of money, and they feel that Drew Harris is basically moving the force towards a UK kind of approach. We're copying off the Brits effectively. So that's that person's take. You've probably heard similar takes.
I have, and there's a big thing. I interviewed a man called Dr. Ian Martyr last week, who is a criminologist. He had some interesting points, but he did talk. I was talking about the basis of zero tolerance. Now, here is an interesting point. Zero tolerance effectively means you go after every single crime, and he said that means that Gardaí no longer have discretion. Discretion is a massive, not a weapon, but a massive skill or a massive ability that the Gardaí have. In other words, they can choose not to turn a blind eye, but they can make a policing decision. I'm going to use my discretion. So I've always found that discretion has been a very Irish thing, and it's used significantly in Ireland, and it has been eroded. And a lot of people would say to me that they do fear that the unique characteristics of An Garda Síochána are being eroded bit by bit, and they're turning into something akin to a UK constabulary. And, you and I would know what the regular is. So the regular is the normal policing units. In England, they're called response officers. So you'd worry sort of about are the Gardaí, who have a uniquely Irish ethos and focus and way of doing things, and a way of doing things wrong, but a way of doing things well, is that slowly morphing into a British constabulary? And there are, guards are concerned about that.
Massively so. So I don't think those issues are going away anywhere soon. But as you say, there may be a deal.
And suspensions. And the issue of suspensions as well. They're very aggrieved about Gardaí. Now, they will say I know of a couple of cases, they think that higher ups don't get suspended when Gardaí on the ground, the regular, the mules as they're called, get suspended for picking their nose.
Yeah, and there's
always slides downwards, and they're very annoyed.
They're annoyed about there is a general sense that the force is investigating itself to such an extent that nobody's able to do their job, and they're all being maligned just for doing it. So yeah, a lot of them feel very aggrieved about that.
Can I just raise just a couple of points? Obviously, in the aftermath of the vote, I was struck by a couple of things. Firstly, how Foursquare, Helen McEntee was behind the commissioner. But the senior leadership team, the SLT, so that's all the deputy commissioners, assistant commissioners, and all the director of ICT and all that sort of stuff. They issued a statement, Foursquare, just before the result, but I think they had in England, it was going to go, we all did. Foursquare behind the commissioner. And it was a very, very strong statement. And then the policing authority also issued a very strong statement. It was like 3 pieces of heavy artillery all firing at once. So it was really interesting to watch. It was boom, boom, boom. We are all behind the commissioner here. So that was interesting. So
it is interesting.
What's going to happen?
And you have to wonder about the timing of things. That's why I want to move to this other topic, because it kind of slides into it nicely, which is the commissioner and his trip to Dubai. And we'll talk about the other development that you published in the Star and the Mirror today in a minute. But just also talking about timing there. I just thought it was interesting. It probably is completely coincidental, but a lot more came out about his visit to Dubai around the same time that all of this happened. And a nice PR video by the Dubai police featuring an interview with Drew Harris was released on social media, the same day. And, it was all very interesting timing, is all I'll say.
Yes, and he was getting hockeyed for, typical PR stuff. Look, that was my fault. And I have the recording of the press conference. You can hear me turning around to the other colleagues, because we'd been at the commissioner. I'd been asking him hard questions. Everybody had been asking him hard questions. Reynolds had, as usual, leading the way. You can hear me turning around and said, lads, can we ask about something else if we're all finished with this? And I did. And I asked about Dubai. Now, be fair to the Commissioner, that was his really first big press with all the crime cars and, since he was in Dubai. So we had to ask him about that. And to be even fairer to him, he didn't tell us anything. He gives some updates, and I noticed he said about letters and exchange. And it was only when we afterwards started doing a bit of digging that we got the line that the Dubai police had sent Lieutenant General Al Mari, the head of the commissioner, basically, of the Dubai police, had sent a letter offering to set up a bilateral agreement with Ireland to have Dubai detectives sent over here to work with the Garda, not patrolling streets, but working with DOCB, Drugs and Organised Crime building up a case against Kinahan. So the Commissioner didn't drop this. I asked him, he answered, and then we got a story from him.
Well, that's that's the massive development that we do want to talk about. I mean, that cannot be shied away from. That is a huge development that the Dubai police are willing to cooperate with the guards to that level that they're going to come over here. I suppose share intelligence, which would be huge. I mean, what information do they have on the Kinahans who've lived there since 2016 that they might be now able to collaborate with and work together on?
Yeah,
it'd be huge.
And it is significant that it will require a bilateral agreement. So the Dubai government, the UAE Emirate government, and the Irish government will have to sign a letter, like a memorandum of understanding, something like that, because there has to be a legal basis for this. Because obviously, as you say, the Dubai police don't have any powers here. But it's going to be an intergovernmental thing. So that's really, really significant. So, I just listen to various analysts today. It's going to be something like the guards will be able to show, well, here's what Christy Kinahan's gang has done here. Here's the various people and everything. But one of the things that will happen, in my opinion, quickly, is Sean McGovern. Because there is, as we've spoken about, the DPP has directed him to be charged over the murder of a man called Noel Kerwin, who was murdered. We spoke about this last week. Who was murdered in December 2016 outside his home in Clondalkin in the driveway of his home, I think at his car. And he was a close friend of Jerry the Moncutch, and he was shot. The view is he was shot because he was seen accompanying Jerry Hutch at the funeral of his brother Eddie in March 2016, February, March 2016. And there are famous pictures of him, so he was spotted. So the guards carried out their investigation, sent an investigations file to the Director of Public Prosecutions, and the DPP has directed Mr. McGovern to be charged over this. So it's not like the Kinahans, where there is a file with the DPP at the minute. The DPP has already examined the file and has ordered him to be charged. So I think that's a sort of, if the Dubai authorities are sending letters saying, we want to do this, we want to help, is it not inevitable that very quickly there's a solution, there's something they can do tangible, is get Sean McGovern and kick him out over to here somewhere to be charged?
Yeah, well, I imagine there's an exchange of, if the Dubai police want to come over here and do all that, surely the guards on our end are saying, well, yeah, but give us Sean McGovern. Yeah, that just makes sense that would be the next logical step. Just the only hope is that Sean McGovern is still in the UAE, and certainly the intelligence seems to be that he is. But maybe that's causing a bit of a delay. They don't know his exact whereabouts.
No, I didn't get that sense. The Commissioner actually went out of his way yesterday to say they, so I'm taking that as the Kinahan leadership, they are still in Dubai. Because look, we've speculated about it.
He said that.
Who did? Yeah, he said they're still in Dubai. No, he didn't name people, but Sean McGovern is tier one of the Kinahan, maybe on minus 1.5. He's not top tier, but he's very close to Daniel. We know he's very close to Daniel. Yeah, right. They said they're still in Dubai. And if you remember, we alluded to this, Justin Kelly, the Assistant Commissioner in charge of serious and organised crime, who was with the Commissioner a few months ago, he said, we know where the Kinahans are. So it's Dubai. So yeah, he said they're still there. So look, is it effectively, is Dubai an open air prison for these fellas now? So would the Commissioner say they're still in Dubai? Because normally that would make people flee. But does he know that they can't get out?
Yeah, there's obviously some development there that we don't know about. I recall that there were whispers about McGovern and his passport and him attempting to leave the country, and that he was unable to do so. Certainly, I'm sure this is fact by the fact that they were sanctioned, and the UAE government also sanctioned them. I'm sure that they can't get out of the country legally with their own passports, but we do know certainly Kinahan has the capacity to get a false passport.
But the fact that the Commissioner said that, and that there's, we all learned about the Dubai police coming, that would be an indication to me that they are relaxed about the Kinahans' leadership not being able to get out of Dubai. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, also the amount of public statements that they're now making shows a degree of confidence as well, doesn't it? I mean, if they really didn't want the Kinahans to know, they'd be keeping all this very hush-hush. So, yeah.
Like the commissioner could have batted off my question saying, look, I don't want to talk about that. He had plenty, but no, he didn't. We all know what he said, but it wasn't anything earth-shattering, but it was just enough for us to go and do a bit more digging, shall we say.
Now, yeah, look, I hope this all means something. I mean, the more cynical side of you would look at the timing of the overall thing. I mean, just even outside of you asking the question in the press conference this week, I mean, him being in Dubai and all of the publicity around that is also around the time when this vote of confidence was being made in him. And the more cynical person could look at it and say, that's interesting timing. It's good PR for the commissioner. All of that going on in Dubai was happening anyway. I mean, Assistant Commissioner Justin Kelly has been to Dubai multiple times and been having these meetings. And I'm not for one second downgrading or downplaying the work that the guards are doing in Dubai, but the presence of the commissioner and the photographs and the video interview and all of that, you could be cynical and look at that and say, is it a PR campaign or does it mean anything?
But let's be fair, the commissioner, the head of the National Police Force, heading over somewhere is different gravy. Do you remember we did one about the commissioner being over in America? Little did we know, it was late 2001, I think, and he met the Secret Service. Remember all that sort of stuff? And we were going, why is he meeting the Secret Service? And then things become clear. So I think it is, if the numero uno goes somewhere and meets someone publicly, then that's a big story. And so really what we're saying is that if it was a PR thing, that the Dubai authorities would have to collude and do the video. So I don't buy that, right? I know what you're saying, but people will always be cynical. But look, it's the commissioner. If he goes to Dubai, it's going to be news. Much more than, with greatest respect to Commissioner Kelly, this is number one.
No, I'm playing devil's advocate on that, and people have raised that point, and as I said, the more cynical side of you would think that that's not necessarily my opinion. Obviously, the fact that he's gone to Dubai is significant, and it's a huge step forward in terms of the relations between the two. Does it mean anything in terms of getting Sean McGovern extradited and having an actual development? We'll see.
There's a thing I putting my defense hat on. The military strategists would always talk about, you go to war when you're assured of the outcome. Okay, right? So it's over like storming Norman Schwarzkopf in 1990, the world, the desert storm. It was basically we're going to have hundreds of thousands of soldiers, and we're going to overwhelm them, and we're going to go when we know we're going to win. And I always think of this, right? So the commissioner went over there, I think. And maybe all the publicity was because they knew what the outcome was going to be. So in other words, he's not coming back with his tail between his legs. He had a level of confidence that this is going to bear positive. It didn't not go over there on spec, shall we say. So that's what I mean. I think maybe it's choreographed because they know that there's, Paul, as ever, reporters are on the outside. We sometimes only scratch the surface. God knows what is happening, right? But I just think that this is, and that's my point. I think that there are things that are going to happen that we'll only get to hear about when they announce.
Well, I mean, we only found out very recently that a property belonging to Daniel Kinahan appears to have been taken off him. So where is he residing? His bank account's been...
That's in Dubai, isn't it? You got that story.
Dubai, yeah. So, I don't know, is he under some form of house arrest somewhere? Do they know exactly where he is? And if you move out of this area, we'll come after you, that type of thing? And now we're heading into the realm of speculation, but it just, there seems to be such a degree of confidence there that, it suggests that there's a lot more going on behind the scenes, but we are not privy to.
You and I met someone the other day, I can't say who it is, but I just said to them, I said, I remember, look, it was said publicly, I said it to Noreen O'Sullivan once when she was commissioner, I said, Commissioner, it's really frustrating for me. You're standing a foot to 2 feet away from me, and I know in your head there's probably 10 things that would get me the front page for a year. And you remember that fella laughed and said, only 10? That's it. We don't get to hear much.
No, we don't. And the persons that get to hear all that are probably the best at their job in keeping it to themselves. And that's why they're good at their job. We better move on because we're taking up a lot of time here with two topics, but also we wanted to talk about the latest development with Stephen Termini. Just to quickly remind people, in case you've been living under a rock and haven't been following this story at all, it's a huge crime story that started at the end of July and it's gone on right up to now, where Mr. Termini was assaulted just between Store Street and Talbot Street there, US tourist from Buffalo, New York, and he was in a critical condition fighting for his life, and even at one stage there was a threat of his eye being lost. And he's thankfully come out of that coma and he is doing well. But the big unexpected twist in all of this has been what's happening with the money that has been raised by his sons. So his sons raised a significant fund of money on GoFundMe, on the website GoFundMe, $130,000. And Mick, you're raising your hand.
So I know. I just want to explain this, and you and I had a joint byline in this, but let's. I always enjoy or like being honest with our readers. Look, you did the heavy lifting because you spoke to Mr. Termini. My involvement, let's be honest, I got a tip off that there was a bit of a problem with this 130. So that's why we got a joint byline. But you spoke to Mr. Termini. How can it be me? Maybe I loaded the gun and you fired it. We'll put it that way.
Yeah, well,
but some people are often interested about joint bylines. The both of us didn't obviously interview Mr. Termini, so we worked together. So I knew you had a relationship, and I suggested to you.
Maybe with respect to other people and to our egos, I think that maybe the only people who really care about bylines are you and me. But anyway,
lawyers who want to sue us.
Yeah. But yeah, no. Look, in fairness, yeah, you had information that something was up. I had prior contact with Mr. Termini, having interviewed him. I rang him. I didn't even get to ask him. It was the first thing that he brought up. It's the first thing he said to me. He said, my son, he's after going off with all the money. He's after stolen the money from me. I went, oh, really? No, but to be fair, we didn't know fully. We had an indication that there was a money problem, but no, Mr. Termini wanted to air this grievance. To be fair to him, it was his issue that he wanted to highlight, and I'm glad that he spoke to me about it. But it's also a very sad state of affairs because Mike and Jesse, his sons, came over here, and people might remember they were interviewed extensively, and they wanted to see the Minister for Justice and all of that. And they raised $130,000, about 120,000 euros on GoFundMe. Stephen told me that his son Mike wasn't talking to him, wasn't answering his phone calls, and he wasn't giving him any of the money. That's what he alleged to me. He went so far as to say he stole the money from me. So look, we had to be very careful with these things. You know, you can't just go and report that, because obviously you could be sued if it's false, whatever.
We did talk about this the night before, because obviously you and I have legal training, and what we write is read by barristers. But you were expressing concerns to me, and I said, fuck it, you're grand. It's America. They're both Americans. No problem.
Yeah, a little more leeway, but no, you still have to be. He's making an allegation, a very serious allegation about his own son. But I made contact with Mike, the son who ran the GoFundMe campaign, and from his perspective, he feels that the money was being raised not for his father's personal use. The money was raised specifically to get himself and his brother over here to Ireland and to pay for their travel expenses and their accommodation expenses while they were here. He said he also fully intended and still intends to pay any medical bills that are sent his way in relation to his father. As when it pertains to however amount of money is left, he says, look, he's willing and open to have that conversation with his father, who he's currently not on speaking terms with, and he's going to sit down with an accountant and talk through all the legalities of all of that. But Mr. Termini feels he's entitled to all of the money, that the money was raised for him, and he was in a critical condition, and he feels that the money should be his, and he feels he would like to use some of the money to come and live here in Ireland permanently, to purchase a home in the west of Ireland where his family originates from, and that was his intention. But Mike doesn't want to give him the money for that purpose at this stage. He says he wants to have a conversation with his father when things have cooled down. But very much at the moment there is a dispute of sorts over the money and that. But the interesting development from this story, I mean, there's a huge reaction to it. An enormous reaction to it, is that a lot of people donated feeling that they were donating directly to Mr. Termini, that they were giving the money to Mr. Termini for his recovery and for him personally. And now that they have heard the words from Mike, they're annoyed, and I understand that a number of complaints have been made to GoFundMe. People are looking for their money back.
Can you, I presume it's closed now, is it?
It is closed now, yes.
Is it still up on the system? Can you read it?
You can still, I have it open here, 133,516 US
what
dollars.
What does the appeal say?
Yeah, I think this is the interesting thing because, obviously went back to read the fine print, as it were, and there is actually nothing in it specifically saying I'm raising the money for my father. There's a photograph of Mike, his brother Jesse, and the father in the middle. And it says, "This is a photo of my biological father, Stephen Termini, along with myself, Mike Rizzuto, and my brother Jesse. Upon returning home from tour with my band, Kissing Candace, I received the news that there was an unprovoked attack by multiple people on my father in Dublin, Ireland. The brutal attack has left my father in a coma after suffering various injuries. He's currently in critical condition with what I'm told are life-altering injuries. I'm receiving this news of this situation as it comes in through the media alongside everyone else. My father instilled the love of music I have inside of me, and there's been huge support to me over the past decade. Although we may not have been the closest throughout the years, he's still my father, and the reason I'm here today. I'm asking you to send healing vibes to my father while my family and I attempt to learn more facts of the situation." And then there is a note from his beloved sister, Michelle. I'm not going to read the whole thing because it just goes into, why he went over to Ireland. But specifically the sentence at the end: "We feel so very helpless as none of us can afford the trip to be with him in his time of dire need." That's it so far as the appeal went, and 130,000 was raised. But there are many people there who feel they were raising the money for Mr. Termini.
I think it's a fair assumption. I think people, would fairly have assumed that, especially with now. Look, maybe you and I read things differently because we're cynical, but I remember reading it. And I remember the biological father, and I went, "Oh, what's going on there?" And what he said about that, not that was his relationships aren't the best, and I said, "Okay, but that doesn't. I mean, and he obviously has different surname, but picture him, the two boys, and the father. People. I think people would be forgiven for thinking that it was, for the father as well as them. Is that a fair point?
Yeah, I think so. It'll be interesting to see what GoFundMe says. They haven't come back to me with a comment yet today about the public complaints, but they've said that they said in a statement to me yesterday, the original story, that the money, all money raised in GoFundMe, they ensure that it goes to the right and proper place. Just in my reading of that, it's not immediately clear what they were asking the money for, to be quite honest. But your assumption would be it's for the dad, and specifically to take care of him. One thing to say in Mike's defense, to a degree, not that I'm taking any side here, but just Mike said, when I put up that fundraiser, I believed that my father was dead or dying, and so the funds were being raised for that matter. Obviously, things have taken a turn for the better in that his father has recovered fully and is out of hospital, and he hasn't been presented with any medical bills. So all this money has been raised, and it would appear he didn't have to spend any of it really, other than on his own accommodation and on flying. So I mean, that's all it appears to have been spent on to date.
Yeah, so we don't know how much is left, do we? He didn't give any indication of that.
No, he didn't. He said that the majority of it was still there, but he wouldn't get into specific numbers, and he doesn't want to get into that. It'll be interesting to see where it goes. I mean, will if the GoFundMe policy is, if it turns out to be fraudulent or seen as not going towards the right cause, all of the money will go back to the people who donated it. That's the way it works. So Mr. Termini has said, look, he might consider opening up his own GoFundMe, and if people want to be generous, they can pay him directly that way. But at the moment, the way it will go is, if this is considered to be wrong, GoFundMe is just going to refund everybody. So I understand there have been many complaints, so it'll be interesting to see where that goes.
Yeah, and it's very sad. There's obviously a familial relationships there, and they've been played out in public. But look, there is a public interest. I mean, clearly there's a public interest in this because God knows how many people donated to this.
Thousands of people donated, most of them Irish. Yeah. So look, it's very sad. It's a sad twist to the tale. Sadly, look, he's back over in Buffalo, New York. But he says he wants to be an Irish citizen. He wants to come here. He feels his life in the US is over. So we'll continue to follow that with interest. So I think we'll leave it there, Mick, will we?
Yeah, another busy week.
It's been crazy, pretty crazy. We didn't even talk about the hole in the beach and the fact that it wasn't a meteorite. Oh.
Or my alleged Croatian war criminal I doorstepped down in Portlaoise. Just so many things happen in a week.
That's good fun.
We move on.
You never know what you'll be working on next.
And God knows what will happen next time.
What will happen next time?
As in, what's next?
God knows. Yeah. It's true. Listen, thanks for listening to us. We'll be back to you next week.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks, everybody.